Hey everyone, Yasin here, and in this video I wanted to talk about what I wish I knew about character design. Okay, so first of all, I have to state that this is just my opinion on character design, and as always, there are more than one valid opinion. So I'm going to tell you things about what I think make good character designs, but that doesn't mean, if I say, I don't think this is necessarily a good way of designing characters, that doesn't mean it's not a good way. It means I don't think that's a good way, but it's perfectly valid. So anyway, if I ask students often, when I ask them, where do you start with character designs? There is this idea that the first thing you start out with is the silhouette. And you may have seen these where you get like characters and they're kind of, it's just, let's say this character has a bow. Oops. And there's some archer person. So it's not uncommon to see things like this as where character designs start. And I'm not a fan of this type of character designing. And the reason is because I don't think this is where character design starts. And I think lately, especially, and this is where it turns into more focused on my opinion, I think too many people focus on this part of character design and they don't focus on this part of character design. They just focus on designs as if the design is like, you make a bunch of thumbnails, you find a design that works. Like you come up with an idea of this character is an archer. Then you make a bunch of archer designs. What if they had a mohawk? Okay. Maybe they have a cape. Okay. And you do, a bunch of these types of designs one after the other, and somehow that is going to result in a good character. But the thing that I feel is that character design should start with the character. It shouldn't start with the design. And so when I make a character, what I almost always start with is first the idea of the character I'm making. Like I think about it first, and then I usually come up with a portrait. And the reason I start with a portrait is because I want to capture the feeling and the personality of this character, and then I will design stuff after based on that portrait. So, for instance, I might not think of just something like an archer. I mean, these are kind of cliches, and you see them a lot, and that's why I think they're not that interesting. I think if nobody designed with silhouettes, then someone designing with silhouettes would be like, yeah, okay, this is fine, this is interesting. But because it's so overdone, you end up with so much of the same designs. Like video games now, they have a lot of the designs. I mean, there's some good ones, but a lot of them are very derivative. They're just kind of the same thing over and over again. So what I like to do is I like to think of the character, and not just the occupation, So let's say I'm going to design something, and there's this this character, and they're a student. They are, let's say, 15 years old. Okay. So, but I have them in a, like, try and think of if you think of the story and then who is there in the story, it can make a lot more sense. So, okay, we've got this 15, this story is about a 15-year-old schoolgirl, and she is a nerd, and she gets bullied a lot. And she puts her attention into her studies, and stuff happens, you know? Okay. So where do we start? Well, as I said, I like to start with a portrait. And what am I going to do? I'm not going to just... I like to, actually let my intuition guide me. And I'll just initially just do whatever comes out. So I might, think about this. Okay, this 15-year-old nerdy schoolgirl. Okay. And having that in mind, I might just end up with a character design or a design of this person. But putting down anything in the beginning is usually good because you can then assess it. So I'll start with like the character until they feel right. And what I'm doing with this character is I'm thinking like, well, okay, they're kind of nerdy, so maybe they're not, the typical aesthetic standard or whatever. Like maybe, and that's not to say they're not good looking or something. It's more like whatever society says is good looking, maybe they don't possess those features. So, for instance, I gave a little hook nose because that's not usually seen. Maybe they have like thinner lips and like a gap in their teeth. Okay, so there we go. Maybe they kind of they like to study a lot. You could go cliche and give them glasses or not, but they're not going to be like super fashion conscious. I think this just doesn't really suit. So for hairstyle, maybe it's something a bit more, simple. But okay, so now I have this face of this character, and I could assess it. Like, what do I like? What do I dislike about this? What's working? What's not working? Maybe let's give like a bigger brow. Maybe bangs that come down. Maybe a birthmark. And maybe she's more insecure. Okay. All right. So now we've got this character, and I might do a few takes just to try like, what if I did go the glasses route and make a character, maybe this one's a bit more chubby. And so there's another option, and you can do this as many times as you want until you find something that fits. But I always try to pay attention to my internal feeling of what is right, and I feel like when the character is right, it, you get a sense for like, yep, that's a character. And so learning to trust that and learning to kind of hear that voice, I think, is very important. So that's what I would do. But let's say for the sake of this one, this design, like this character was fine, right? Let's say that's the character. Okay, so now with this character, we already see a few things about them. First of all, they look kind of skinny, a little, scrawny. If I think about them as a character, am I going to make them, if I was drawing the rest of them, am I going to make them like with this kind of stance, where they're very heroic? Probably not. I'm probably not going to do that. So you can see how if I had started with thumbnails, I might not even have the right things to go on, like to begin with, because I might have done like more of a heroic set of thumbnails, and then I'm now locked into that type of thinking, as opposed to starting with the face. And then it's like, okay, so what body goes with this type of face? Well, maybe just gonna try and get the shapes down. So she's got this kind of like triangle face, and here it's good to like make your character and then simplify them as you draw them more. So each time you're kind of refining the character. So okay, we've got small, like relatively small eyes, thick brow, nose, and mouth. Okay, so maybe she kind of hunches over a bit. She's not confident. So her shoulders are high, like this. Usually got like, I don't know, she's holding a book or maybe a laptop or an iPad or something. Hunched over. She has a hood because, often insecure people might have hoods. Yeah, maybe not just insecure. I'm not trying to, typecast, but I know for myself, I liked hoods a lot because they cover you and they're warm and stuff. So, like, I wore a lot of hoodies when I was 15, and it doesn't hurt to use yourself as reference. But anyway, okay, so got a hoodie and this type of like posture where you're kind of leaning forward, bent back, and yeah, maybe the hair isn't even. Maybe she cuts her own hair or something. But we're getting somewhere. And, this is dating me because I don't know what people look like, and it's like, oh, what did people look like when I was in high school? Oh, well, they had like these baggy pants and stuff. So this is probably not what people look like. I should do research on what do kids wear nowadays. Well, if you're gonna be topical about it, I guess I should do this and give her a mask. But anyway, neck is at an angle. So yeah, now I have like, this is one option, and then I can explore different options of the body, but I started with the character. I didn't start with the design. I let the design come out after establishing the character. And one of the best ways of figuring out about characters, and this is more on the story side, and I think that's the side I want to focus on, because I think I've made videos before on body shapes and things, and there are other people who talk a lot about the design. Like, if you want, if you want to create characters, you can, base them off simple shapes. So circles, triangles, and then, okay, so this is like the triangle character, and this is the rectangle character, and you try and say, okay, what do I feel about these characters? But for me personally, I don't know. It's okay to think about this stuff, but usually after the character is made, as opposed to just, thinking about, starting this way where, hey, I've got my circle character, I've got my, I mean, you could, because these tend to go together. You get rectangle, circle, and triangle, or triangle this way sometimes. Yeah, these types of characters. But I would much rather start with like the character in terms of their personality. Now, one of the things that's really helpful for defining who your character is and coming up with a backstory that I found, and this is something I just discovered by accident, but I was making a backstory to a character, and I had to figure out their parents' story just because it was part of the backstory. And then I realized, once you figure out the parents of the character gets way easier to understand. Like, everything kind of makes sense if you find out the parents. So let's go back to this character. Okay, they're insecure. Let's think about their parents. Maybe their parents are kind of, they're immigrants, and they don't speak English well, but they told her, studying is important, you need a good education, you really ought to be doing this. And so she feels like, okay, sure, I need to do that, that's important, that's what I've been told. She's got a lot of pressure. Maybe her parents were educated themselves, and they couldn't use their education. It wasn't really... Sorry, I gotta fix the eye because I noticed the eye's like further back. It wasn't really accepted or something, and like their degrees weren't accepted, so they have knowledge of things, but they don't really work in a thing that is that they get to feel proud of, so they want better for their kid. And then maybe the kid is just like overwhelmed by all the pressure all the time, but they are smart, so okay, so studying is something they can do, and they do sort of want to please their parents to a point, because they feel like they owe their parents, like, yeah, okay, but socially things aren't so good. They don't really fit in. They feel like it's not, whatever their parents offer tends to alienate them. Like, maybe they say, well, you should buy these clothes because they're on sale, and then that is not, the type of clothes, that maybe other kids approve of, or something like that. There's a lot you can work with, but then you think about, okay, and how does this kid react? Like, maybe this kid kind of rejects some of that stuff and tries to be cool, or something like that. You can sort of flesh out, like, what is the result of that on a person. Maybe they want to rebel against their parents, so they start to act out. Okay, well, if you get these types of things going on, like, let's say this character is unbalanced, what you can do is then reflect that in the character design. So how do we create something that's unbalanced, that's not really, how do we show that in something like character design? Well, you could make asymmetrical patterns. So Maybe there's like the thing on the sleeve, but it's only on one side, or you know, you could have hair that's kind of like it's only on one side, so it's kind of unbalanced. Whereas if it's all symmetrical, it's more put together. You could have things end at awkward places. You could do it with patterns. You could do it in a very simple way, and maybe she has a shirt, and that shirt is like some kind of angry cat. But these are all things that you use to build your character, right? So that's kind of the thing I mostly wanted to talk about, which is start with a character and then and come up with the story of the character, and then work on the rest of like the designs. Because once you know the character, then when you come up with designs, you're asking yourself, is this right? Is this what does this suit to the character that is in my head? As opposed to if you're just doing generic characters for the sake of characters, and you think like, well, I've got to do this character and this character, like I need my default berserker character with the big axe or something. And it's like, okay, so you've got your silhouette for that character. And you want to pose, right? So you get the feeling across, this character strong, and then you work off it, and you I'm just showing you like the typical way of designing characters is like you get a bunch of silhouettes and you put variations, and then you start to like flesh them out and figure out what each thing is. That's fine. As I said in the beginning, I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm saying that this is one type of design, and it creates a very specific type of result, which I feel tends to often be a little more generic, a little more expected, and for me personally less interesting than if you start with a character. And if you feel like I don't have a character in my mind, or I don't really have a story to tell, then maybe you need to ask yourself, okay, do you really want to be a character designer? Or are you kind of saying what you think you should say, or what sounds good in your head when you say it? Because I did this for a lot of things where I thought, I want to be an illustrator, and it's like, do I really want to be an illustrator, or am I just saying it? Because I thought like, well, I guess that's what I could be. And for me, I much prefer character design, but more than that, I prefer making my own stories. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. But you might not want to do that stuff. And so really ask yourself that, and don't just tell yourself you want to do stuff if you don't necessarily want to. Like if your heart's really not about making characters, don't worry about it too much. I would say do whatever you're passionate about. And that's something I keep saying over and over again. I'm sorry about, repeating, sounding like a broken record. But I feel like if I keep repeating it enough, then maybe some people who didn't think about it that way will think about it. And that would be a big help, just to get a bit of the counter position. So once you've got your characters, you can start to think about symbols like the unbalanced personality. Or I mentioned the burden. Like she feels like her parents their things are a heavy burden. So that bent back can kind of indicate that, but we could also do it with like the hood and almost make it feel like, make it oversized, and it almost feels like she's got like this heavy weight on her. Or we could give her like a really big backpack that really shows like, well, first of all, she's got a lot of books and stuff, but also it's showing that there is this heavy burden on her back. And I know it sounds silly when you think about it in terms of like a very I don't know, sometimes when I talk about design, it's like, well, that's just, you're just saying exactly what's happening. Like, this person has a heavy burden, so you gave them a heavy backpack. But people usually don't see those things. They don't see like, they just take it for granted. Oh, this character has a heavy backpack, because they don't know the story. You're kind of revealing it, but when you include these things, the character is sort of like revealed in a much faster way, because people don't, they subconsciously start to pick up on things, like things aren't quite okay in this person's life. It just starts to make sense, and I think that works really well for characters, is to make sure everything has a purpose. Everything makes sense. Like, okay, she has a backpack, but are we going to make it like a super cool backpack? Not really, because that's going to conflict with her character. Are we going to dress her in very expensive clothes? Again, that doesn't really match the character. So rather than having a bunch of silhouettes that are describing characters that have nothing to do with the character you're actually designing, I think it's fine to start up close. Like, that's how I like to start, with the face, figure the character out, and then start to build around it based on who they are as a person. And you almost have to believe this character exists. Like, it really helps to believe these characters are real. And the longer you work with them, the longer you invest, you think about them, you develop their story, you think about who their parents are, what their childhood was like, what types of things were interested, if there were some significant events in their life, the more it works. And even if you're designing a character like the Archer character we started off with, but you think like, let's say this character was not modern schoolgirl, but she was, let's say, taking place in this medieval fantasy type environment, similar character, but just in a different context. And she had to join some type of militaristic organization, and it's like, what role do you what suits you best? And she found like, oh, she likes bows because she doesn't really get along with people, and the bow suits her best. She likes staying at a distance. She observes people a lot, so for her, she has a very keen sense of observation skills, and so archery really fit her, and that's what she wanted. And so you still might think like, okay, so this character is not the hero archer, but they're kind of like a little bit hunched over, but they're very good. They practiced a lot, and you end up with like a character who's a lot more interesting. Also, as I started with this character, what are their flaws? That's a much better way of designing characters, in my opinion, is to come up with their flaws as opposed to their strengths. So her strength would be, well, she's this great archer. Okay, fine. What are her flaws? Maybe she's really insecure about the gap in her teeth, so she always tries to keep her mouth shut. And when she talks, she kind of doesn't want to open her mouth too much because she doesn't want to reveal the gap in her teeth. So she kind of mumbles like this, and it's hard for people to understand what she's saying. And maybe when she does that, her chin kind of pops out a bit. just thinking about stuff like this can really, really help. And then when in the story, if she's always mumbling, people can be asking her like, hey, speak up. What did you say? But she doesn't want to open her mouth big, so she's just like, oh, just was saying, I see a target over there. I don't know, but yeah, I think character design is a lot about thinking, a lot about character, and yes, design is good. Design is important. Of course, it's important. But we always talk about design. Everything, like, there's so many tutorials on how to make designs of characters. And I'm not saying it's not important, because it totally is. I'm just saying not enough focus on the character. So that's my speech on character design. Hope it resonates with someone. Maybe it'll make it easier to think about how to design characters, and maybe even make character designing more fun. Because just, if you start with a page of silhouettes, at least for me, it's okay, but it's not that fun. It's not as fun as making characters who exist in a world. So yeah, I hope this helps, and thanks for watching.